Maryland LCV works through education and political action to work for clean water and healthy air and climate resilient communities. And so this roundtable is a perfect representation of the kind of work we do, bringing experts together in a space to explain the landscape and the policy implications and the implementation of efforts around these areas. In this case today, talking about energy affordability and how that pairs with energy and energy efficiency and all the work we're doing for that in Maryland. And also the connection that has to our federal partners and where we could use federal support and how we can build those relationships again to regain that federal support. So with that, I am going to turn this conversation and facilitation of this roundtable over to my husband, the Congressman, Olszewski.
Thanks, Marissa. Good morning, everybody. I think this is the first time Marissa and I have had a professional engagement like this, so it's really actually great. But I appreciate your leadership in this space. Grateful for the ways in which you are fighting for more sustainable, more renewable, clean future for our daughter and for all future generations. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you all for the work you all are doing across the landscape. It's great to have state partners, private partners, organizations out there doing great work. I know that we are gathering at a time where it is hard to be doing this work, where the federal government once had great promise and incredible investment. We are seeing an administration with President Trump who is rolling back affirmatively a lot of the green energy projects, a lot of the supports that the federal government was coming to the table with. And so look forward to hearing ways in which both I can be an advocate and partner as we seek to restore some of that. I'm very proud to be part of bills like the Energy Bills Relief Act, which would bring the federal government back to the table, expand proven programs, modernize the grid, and help deliver real results. I'm proud to be supporting Senator Van Hollen out of Team Maryland and his work to have data centers bring their own energy, for example. But certainly know that the state too has been trying to navigate and balance the need for investment in green energy affordability with our residents' energy efficiency. And so I know that those challenges only become harder when the federal government is there as a partner. So looking forward to hearing what's working on the ground, what the gaps and challenges are, and what additional support can make that happen. And so I really want to make this about hearing from you and making this your time. So I thought if it's okay with friends at LCV to just go around and everyone do a quick introduction of who they are, with whom they work, and then maybe get into a few questions and some conversations. You might start us off.
Sure. My name is Eli Allen with Civic. We're a community-based nonprofit in Baltimore. We strengthen community education, skills development, and community service, and we're working to make it easy and affordable for residents to lower their energy bills and make clean energy upgrades to their homes. We work hand in hand with residents to create rooftop solar installs, electrify their home, and access all the benefits that are available in the state. So we're excited for this conversation.
Hi, I'm Nicola Tran. I'm Director of the Whole Home Energy and Repair Programs at the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. And we administer a number of programs for low-income homeowners and affordable housing properties, providing funding for energy retrofits, energy efficient new construction, and rehabilitation, as well as decarbonization.
Hi there, Allison Tjaden. I'm with the Maryland Department of the Environment, whose mission is to protect and restore the environment for all Marylanders, for our air, for our land, and for our water. I work in the Air and Radiation Administration's Climate Change Program as a Special Projects Manager, helping to implement the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022, and still the Inflation Reduction Act. So we keep going at it.
Joshua Galloway with New Ecology, I'm the Director of Partnership Development, and we work at the intersection where the housing crisis and the climate crisis converge. We focus on affordable housing communities and helping residents figure out the best choices they can make for their their life and also for property management, property maintenance, what systems work and can be maintained. And so that is our work. So,
I am Mary Royce. I'm the operations manager at the Maryland Clean Energy Center here with my coworker Pamela Powers. Maryland was formed at the General Assembly to be a green bank for the state of Maryland. I don't know if you want to dive into more specifics.
I'm Pam Powers. I'm the Director of Government and Industry Relations with Maryland Clean Energy Center. We work to accelerate the transition to clean and renewable energy, energy efficiency technologies and services in Maryland.
Hi, I'm Jenn, Aiosa. I am the Deputy Director at the Maryland Energy Administration. Our mission is to deliver clean, affordable, and reliable energy for the residents of Maryland, as well as greenhouse gas reductions in a just and equitable way. We do that in sort of two primary ways. The first is we are stewards of the state's Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which is a dedicated fund that we deploy for clean energy and energy efficiency across the state in a variety of ways. But we also have a policy arm. And so we advise the governor, the General Assembly, and increasingly we are working with other states within the PJM interconnection on regional energy policy.
Good morning. I'm José Coronado-Flores. I'm the owner and founder of Flores Photovoltaics, a recently established licensed solar installation and operations and maintenance company. I also do private lobbying on zero emissions heating equipment.
Hello, I'm Tanvi Gadhia. I work at Sustain Our Future Foundation, which is a national nonprofit, which does a variety of things, including consulting with renewable energy developers to ensure there's community engagement processes and community benefits agreements when there are renewable energy development projects, which has resulted in about $8 million in grants distributed across the country in the past couple of years. We also have social impact programs focused on environmental justice, in addition to our grant making and consulting work. And in addition to all of that, we also have a program here in Maryland funded by the Maryland Energy Administration, where we're partnering with a local Black-owned small business to provide free electrification, weatherization to low and moderate income households in Central Maryland, Southern Maryland, and Western Maryland. And coming up soon, we're partnering with another organization to provide free rooftop solar, also funded by Maryland Energy Administration. So.
Great. Wes Stewart, I'm from Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. We're a Baltimore-based nonprofit service provider. And I'll talk more, but we have a whole house approach where we bring together energy with health, housing, to not only address energy efficiency, but also housing stability and health around asthma, energy, fall prevention, except for seniors. So a holistic approach, and we'll talk about what's working, share some of that with you.
That's great. And we can even follow up. I'm going to recognize some of my team members as well. Sorry, Danielle, do you want to say anything?
Oh, I'm Danielle. I'm with Maryland League of Conservation Voters. I'm our voter engagement and education manager. Thanks for being here.
Then I've got Monet and Jamie on our communications team who are here today. Mandy is our district director who is out there, and Kevin is our staff assistant who will be around today. I'm just going to say, so I'm the co-chair of the housing work group for SEEK, which is the Sustainable Energy Coalition in Congress, one of the first ones we joined. And I think having that holistic approach is, I think, going to be really important long term. I want to just sort of, I guess, maybe start like big picture, and whoever wants to jump in. What do you feel like the public doesn't know, or you wish the public knew about what is like? We're hearing a lot about the affordability, energy costs. What do you wish people knew about high energy bills, clean energy, energy efficiency that really isn't breaking through currently? Like, so just sort of big picture, what's sort of the divide between what's happening and what people are thinking or knowing?
I don't think that people realize the quality of their insulation and their windows and their doors really affect the cost of their electricity bills. I think they have more control than what they think they do. And I think that that message can be sent more broadly throughout the state.
I agree with that. I wanted to jump in right away and say that people don't know that they can do something about it. At this point, especially in BGE territory, a solar loan is the same as your utility bill. Or you could even do the calculation that the loan is less than your utility bill, and you can get an almost 100% offset if you have the right property and roof orientation. So people, they can do something about it, and that's exactly what you're saying.
So I want to add to that because I think what folks don't understand, unfortunately, is that right now, clean energy is both the cheapest and easiest energy to get on our grid. So the reason why we have seen bills go up over the last year or two, in part is because we have a real constrained transmission grid. And for the first time in decades, we're seeing more demand from data centers, from electrification. But unfortunately, clean energy has been politicized to a point that folks don't understand. I think exactly what José just said. You can get solar on your roof in relatively short order and start reducing your bills right away. In the long run, it is not more expensive. It is actually cheaper. And we need to be getting that message out to folks.
So on that cost imperative, because I'm talking with the politicization, particularly of solar and offshore wind, what advice would you have for me as I talk? I think that there's probably an economic need there, as I talk to my colleagues on the other side of the political aisle, but like, is that what I should be talking about? Are there other factors I should be thinking about as we sort of like talk about how we either bring back programs or depoliticize some of this conversation? It's really about like, with cost is sort of the underlying factor, but.
Yeah, I think the kind of clean energy investment present reality like a kind of triple win impact, where it's the most cost effective way to get electrons onto the grid, and they're investments that invest in people's homes and directly in their energy, lowering their energy bills. So where people can get rooftop solar on their home, where maybe they can get battery storage, shift their energy use to off-peak hours, will have insulation, weatherization services that also make their home healthier. And then investing in kind of workforce training and launching careers in the industry. There's so many wins that come out of like kind of bringing all those pieces together.
Something like solar is freedom. If you can get your house to, you can get your roof to get you 100% or 120% offset of your utility bill, you're free. It's not tied to any party. And many of my customers, they're not even thinking about politics. They call me because they don't want to pay the bills anymore and they want to be off the grid. They want to just be free. So that's one of the greatest ways I think can be framed, that solar. Once again, solar, not every house is good for solar, but if your house is right, you can be free forever.
Yeah. Well, and if your house isn't right, you can also subscribe to community solar.
Exactly.
So that's something that the state has put a lot of funding supports behind to provide solar to folks who live in multifamily buildings or maybe don't own their roof, they're renters. So yeah, I think the idea of pitching clean energy as energy independence as well as affordability, that really has to be appealing to everybody.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. The resilience factor, I think becomes more and more important in the volatility that we see in the energy market specifically, but the economic market as well. And have it utilizing all ways and ideally as comprehensive approach as possible can help make homes for every homeowner more resilient to factors such as volatile climate, weather events. Weatherizing your home will make you more resilient to high heat or very cold weather events. The solar will make you more resilient towards volatility in the energy price market. Reducing your usage overall will reduce your exposure to rising utility rates as well. And I think that's one of the factors that a lot of consumers don't fully understand, that their bill is made up not only of how much they're using, but also what the rates are, and those work together. And a lot of people say now, oh, I made all these changes and my bill still keeps rising. But just imagine how high your bill would be now if you hadn't made those efficiency changes in your home. It would, multiply with the rising rate. So you do insulate yourself, not just your house, but also yourself,
Yeah.
to those volatile factors.
That's a real challenge, right? Because it's hard to prove the counterfactual. I mean, you certainly can, but I don't think people tend to think that way.
Yeah.
They just say, oh, I did all this like weatherization and done this insulation and my bill still went up 15%.
Right.
Is there a way that we could say, no, actually, it would have been an 80% increase had you not gone through all that effort because of the rates?
Yeah.
Speaking of rates, I mean, that is obviously a huge driver of costs. What should policymakers be thinking about there? I mean, I mentioned some federal legislation. I know Maryland really tried to take some action this past legislative session. Frankly, I think with a mixed bag, if I'm just sort of being candid, like balancing the need to give immediate relief to ratepayers, but I also worried about some of the drawdowns from the clean energy investment that I think will, as you've all pointed out, are those longer term. So what should we be thinking about in terms of how do we think about issues of the grid and power production to sort of really be the rate side of the house a little bit?
I mean, I'm happy to jump in there too. I think one of the things that the Maryland Energy Administration is looking at is how can we get more out of our existing infrastructure? So there is this, I don't know, I guess it's a reaction that, well, we just need to build more, gas-fired power plants, or we need to build more power plants, more transmission lines. And I think that there is a whole body of things that we can and should be looking at to make our existing transmission infrastructure more efficient. In December, the governor signed an executive order on energy. And one of the things that he is requiring us to look at, he wants MEA to petition the Public Service Commission to start making utilities think first about what they call non-wires alternatives or alternative transmission technologies that can help us utilize that infrastructure that we have a little bit more, a little bit better, before just jumping to a new build, a new line, or new generation. So that's a huge area that I think we're going to hear a lot more about in the coming months and years. And so pushing utilities in that direction, I think, could be a real help.
And I think one of the, key features that were really important in the Energy Bills Relief Act and information on that is about reversing the attacks on clean energy. And it seems to be unique for kind of a strange position to be in about saying that we're holding back energy at a time that we need the energy, with the offshore wind or the solar and the queues for the solar to get permitted and online. I think that is a huge area of importance. And thinking about the federal government's now engagement in that very directly to try to keep fossil fuel online when states themselves have decided that and the companies themselves have decided it's time for those to retire because they are the technologies of the past. And those communities have already prepared, funded, and gotten ready to turn that clean energy online. And the federal government's coming in the way to say maybe that if they disagree, but that is really upsetting the apple cart with the plans to move forward.
Allison, you also mentioned that you're still doing some IRA stuff.
We sure are.
What are we still implementing that we were able to get through and that hasn't been, in my opinion, illegally withheld from this administration? And what are we missing by the cuts that have been made in the pullbacks?
Well, it is a very unique opportunity to be working with our federal partners in the US EPA at a time when we are bombarded with attacks and appeals and trying to turn back the clock in time to the levels of protections from decades and decades ago that we need to keep a clean environment. But we are thankfully still working to implement our climate pollution reduction grants from the IRA that went through the EPA. We have both the planning grant for the state of Maryland, as well as our local planning grants for Baltimore and DC, as well as large scale coalition grants with our state neighbors to the north and the south of us for the Atlantic Conservation Coalition and the Clean Corridor Coalition for EV charging up the 95 corridor through Connecticut. So don't raise it too high because I want to keep going. We're actually having a tremendous amount of success with the plans that we laid, painstakingly
Yeah.
from the launch of the IRA. We all worked really hard together around this room and all across the state of Maryland, and we're tremendously successful for bringing those IRA dollars to Maryland. Some of them, like the climate pollution reduction grants that we're overseeing, are being put into action to make a real difference, but obviously, not all of them were. Some were illegally taken back, like our colleagues here at the Maryland Clean Energy Center leading the way on our pushback around solar for all. But we do have grants like a DOE codes grant that is sitting in limbo. It is neither, we were selected, it wasn't canceled, but it's just not moving forward.
Well, and that's where we are too. So MEA was supposed to be the recipient of around $136 million under the IRA here in homes rebate programs. We have been gearing up. We got a conditional award in early January of 2025, and it's been pretty much radio silence since. We've done all the work to develop the plans. We want to get those rebate dollars out to Marylanders, and we're in this holding pattern.
And we've been doing implementation, education for implementation with National Housing Trust and SAVE, the Stewards for Affordable Housing, working with multifamily property owners who are interested in here and her funds. And so doing preliminary analysis of individual properties, talking to property management, asset management, development folks. When the money comes through, these are the steps to do to electrify your property. And so I think there's a lot of energy still around it, and we're ready.
And I want to just add, over 60 million of those funds were dedicated to low-income households and affordable housing properties. And that's, the population that is often hit the hardest by the energy costs.
And I think even with some of the bipartisan things in the past, like the DOE Weatherization Assistance Program, under the infrastructure bill, that was doubled in terms of those investments. They're still critical to make sure those are not touched. There's always been bipartisan support, but for low-income communities to really level the playing field, we have to continue to invest. So solar for all was a dramatic cut in making solar available for low-income households. And so those are where it is still critical for Congress to help lead the way to seed those markets, because you're not only paying for it, but you're building the contractor capacity, you're building the ability for people to envision themselves as also, hey, new technologies, I have access, and we should be able to take advantage of those new technologies as well, not just middle and upper income. So we're really vital that Congress still has that role and can also protect what has historically been bipartisan as well.
Are there other sort of as we think about the attainable or affordable housing landscape, I think particularly there, this is my inclinations from when I was working as county executive, it was always like, how do we, people always, the initial response to how do we make this as cheap as possible? Right. So it was really this about affordability, which is why I stopped calling it affordable and I started calling it attainable, because it needs to also have access to good services and parks and schools and transportation, job opportunities, and it should be affordable. Right. But affordability isn't just also the construction, it's the long-term costs of living there. Just sort of what's the general landscape as sustainable energy and solar, et cetera, in that space. What else? I mean, in addition to what you've already.
Well, I think the most important thing to be aware of is we want to have equitable access. And this charts for traditional weatherization energy efficiency for low-income communities to access just basic weatherization. We need to pursue a whole house holistic approach. The department is moving that way. We've been doing that for a number of years. And what that means is that I'm income eligible as a family or a senior, but the program is going to defer me because I have a roof issue or water infiltration in the basement. I've got asbestos or mold. So we have to help families and seniors solve that first and not just say, hey, you're eligible, your house needs weatherized, come back to us when you. So what's working is a more holistic approach. And so that means that we're bringing together 2 to 6 funding sources, grading those in homes. So you bring together philanthropy, Maryland Energy Administration, DHCD locally and state,
Yeah.
CDBG. So bringing those in a holistic approach, but also there's tremendous health benefits in doing that. So we're reducing carbon emissions, we're improving indoor air quality, and we're also addressing where we can asthma, lead, and injury issues. So that approach is effective, but it also makes those programs accessible for low incomes. Otherwise, it's only going to go to folks who already are living in a more stable home, but that is really critical. And we could talk some more about solar because same issue there. Roof, the electrical panel has to be replaced. Those are vital to really make solar happen, and it is happening now. So we really thank MEA that is actually working in low income communities. If you address the roof and electrical, that's really starting. So some of those are still available, but not at the level we all want to see that happen.
Yeah, especially challenging for houses that were built decades ago. And all the more reason to be having conversations about how do we not create new attainable affordable housing that runs into those same challenges. It's probably cheaper to just do it all at the front end, build the electrical infrastructure, put on the solar panels, and put it on the roof.
And then that's something that, we're working at the department as well, on the single family side to create that whole home approach and address all the issues at once. That's typically the most cost effective way to deploy those funds because you don't want to put the solar on a property that is leaking air out of all sides, and you can't produce all the solar that's required to power that house. And then on the affordable housing side, the same approach has also been shown to be the most efficient way to get the funding out and to produce the maximum results is to bundle it all into a comprehensive project. So we at DHCD, we work with our rehabilitation programs that do the deep retrofits and rehabilitation of properties and then leverage the energy funding for the energy efficiency equipment, for the electrification of equipment, for adding solar, for adding the EV chargers all at the same time, so that you can, maximize the funding that is available to get a result at the lowest cost. And you don't have to go through multiple funding processes for multiple applications and come back.
And I think one of the things that has been really important to help make sure that we're driving that kind of investment in the right place is helping also not just bolster the investment and the incentives and have these amazing collaborations and partnerships to do it, technical assistance and the outreach and education, but then also making sure there are standards that everybody should be shooting to. So in Maryland, we've because of the Climate Solutions Now Act, we have our building energy performance standards, which are the standards by which large buildings in Maryland have to achieve those energy standards over the course of the next 15 years. And I think that is another piece that needs to be paired so that we know we're all going to be driving that investment in the right direction.
I'll actually just kind of emphasize, I mentioned the benefit of and importance of outreach and education. We know that there can be distrust of like new technology in solar, and there are predatory solar companies out there signing people up for services that are not in their best interest. And so we've seen a lot of benefit in investing in kind of community-based outreach of going to neighborhood association meetings, working with community leaders, talking one-on-one with residents, dispelling myths, and helping people understand what types of clean energy services are going to be most beneficial for them, how they can sign up. And then as Wes was saying, kind of having a one-stop shop process to make it easy to qualify for every single grade of service someone could benefit from in one process. I'm hand in hand to kind of complete whatever complex projects in a fairly streamlined way.
I know we've got some private sector partners here at the risk of going too far. Do we need better regulation? Do we need to prevent predatory rate, agreements? Do we need certification by the state to say these are companies that are sort of, that I'm just sort of like, what's the way to sort of avoid? Or is it, we have to trust the market?
I mean, I'll just say, the Maryland has been trying to do that. So a couple of years ago, we passed, Senate Bill 1, which basically said you had to get licensed to, market retail solar and that you couldn't charge more than what the standard offer service was from your local utility. And we saw basically third-party, energy providers leave the state. This year, legislation was passed to try to open that door back up to allow for third-party, energy providers back into the state with some safeguards. So I think it's still to be determined. But it has been, I think, an issue, and Eli spoke to it, yeah.
Yeah, and if I may add, my company is actually in charge of dealing with, they're called like orphan properties that people are on a lease to pay their solar, signed 2 years ago, and the solar panels have not produced once. They haven't even been permitted or granted interconnection. Lots of companies and local companies in Maryland have gone out of business, and these clients are left with leases that they still get billed monthly, auto charged. Solar never worked. So I can attest that there were predatory practices, people that lied to people. I've encountered so many customers where we go to maybe just do O&M work for them, that they tell me that they were pitched a 90% offset, and they're barely seeing 40%. We use like programs to model that. Everything's a model, but something that drastic is pretty intense, that they end up paying their solar loan or solar lease in addition to a very minimally reduced bill. So it's scary, and I do feel bad for these individuals. But we help them, we try to get their project. The projects get left at 90%, like the 90% to the finish line, and it's that 10% that like finesse that was just never done.
And some of that's due to the electrician capacity. So one of the areas that we do need greater workforce development is building out that. So for the permitting process, for the approval process that you're talking about, that is a big barrier right now to getting things to final completion. Is that capacity?
Yeah, and just to add to it, it's the kind of the Maryland administration, their Maryland Solar Access Program sets high contractor standards to ensure people are going to benefit from solar. And I'd love to see actually some of those standards rolled out kind of beyond as kind of, across the state for anyone going solar.
We've probably touched on some of this. States are the laboratories of democracy. Lots of opportunities to understand what works and what doesn't. Just sort of from your perspective, what are the shining examples of Maryland that we should hold up, that I should take back to DC with me as like these are things worth replicating? And what are there things where it's like, ooh, maybe we need to like still work on that and avoid some of these challenges or pitfalls?
The best programs that we've worked with Maryland DHCD have been the greenhouse gas reduction program, which provides funding for electrification and also electrification assessment funds. And so that is what people need to reach the BEPS targets. And the other piece is MEA with the climate energy equity funding directly for communities that are trying to transition to clean energy, climate resilient work. They're providing the money that is allowing that to happen. And some projects we work on combine kind of multiple funding sources. And so the relationship between MEA and Maryland DHCD is great.
Well, a lot of the counties have property tax credit for solar, and as the residential tax credit, federal tax credit is gone, I lean really heavily into this. Prince George's County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City, up to 50% of the project, up to $5,000 total, can be go against your property tax credit for your home, and that's super attractive to people. And don't know how you could do it federally, but just thinking beyond just money back in for your income tax.
We actually, when Jen was our chief sustainability officer, one of the things among many that she argued for in both the budget of Baltimore County, I think, was to double our investment because we had the credit, but it was so backlogged that it was taking years for people to actually realize it. So I think we've now gotten to a point where our budget's keeping pace with those credits, and hats it for the work there. And now.
Thank you.
Well, I do think in building off of the example you said with the greenhouse gas reduction program through DHCD, I would imagine other states were also good, but I've got a lot of Maryland pride. But the level of coordination and preparation that all of the partners here worked on over the 2 years preparing for the Inflation Reduction Act funding to supercharge and deliver all of the attributes that we're talking about that we want to see for Maryland. We really stepped up to the challenge, I think, across Maryland. And I agree, we're ready for those funds when they unfreeze and we come back to Maryland. And I think we're going to see that even though there has been a hiccup in that, we're still all working for those initiatives through DHCD, through MEA, through MCC, and all these partnerships across state and local governments and nonprofits and the private sector. And so when those funds come available, watch out, Maryland's ready, you know? So I think the foundation is really here. We're just waiting for the money to get turned back on.
And how do we both stay ready? And then how do you feel weigh in just sort of like what you're hearing from the folks you're working with out there generally is as well?
Yeah, I think something that hasn't been touched on that I'm hearing a lot from people is concerns around rate increases being seen at the same time as seeing companies like BGE having a monopoly over energy systems and being able to see record profits at the same time their rates are increasing tremendously, and also seeing a lot of increased demand from data centers and a lot of concerns around what regulations are in place before these data centers are created and how much that increase in demand is also increasing rates. And thinking about, are there more efficient ways of doing data centers? Are there ways of ensuring that data centers are sourced from clean energy? And thinking about some of these other factors that are tying into these rate increases that we're seeing that people are really struggling with.
I will tell you from my perspective, it's hard to watch. Is it Loudoun County? Loudoun County, Virginia is going gangbusters with the tax revenue for data centers. So much so that I think that they've reduced their taxes something like 50%, their property taxes. Local executives dream, but at what cost? And then we have sort of the issue of the Piedmont Reliability Project that, as best I can tell, and I still have not gotten a response from either PJM or PSDG. As best I can tell, taking power from Peach Bottom's plant in Pennsylvania across the northern part of Maryland, effectively to power those plants. What's interesting, I think, to your point, right, is that like not only are the plants not bringing their own power to the table, but when we're building out a grid, if we were to build that project, because it's all through Maryland, that Marylanders would bear the burden of that $800 billion cost. And I think that's wild that we're seeing sort of the benefit all go one place, but we're going to ask states to, and I think the average citizen, the average voter, the average resident is like, it just doesn't seem fair or right. So, and that says nothing of like all the diesel backups and all the other challenges that data centers, but I appreciate the perspective.
I was just saying in terms of what's working, what's success.
Yeah.
We have low-income communities and households who are embracing new technologies. So as long as we provide equitable access, we have a number of properties that have now gone through solar, and we have seniors that actually have zero electric bills on their monthly bills. And so we're seeing that with MEA support. We also have the ability to reach those households if we reduce barriers like just the application process. So your county executive background, we have funding, how do we make it work? One of the shining examples is the state of Maryland, state of New Jersey. Their housing departments are now doing income reciprocity. And this is a concept we've always asked Congress to address. But if HUD and DOE could allow different programs to have income reciprocity. When I apply for TANF, or I apply for social security, when I'm eligible, I'm then deemed automatically be eligible for a weatherization program for solar. So those are kind of things they're hard to get past at the congressional level, but that's working at the state level, income reciprocity. If you think about those multiple applications and how we make that much more efficient, that's really working. But
Yeah, and that's the most pronounced in the federal programs. There's a lot of over regulation and barriers in the entry for such programs that really could be deployed at a much larger scale and faster efficiency to reduce the entry barriers for customers.
That's super helpful, and we'll have our legislative team, I'd be especially interested on the income eligibility reciprocity. Probably a little bit of a lift at the federal level right now. But I think that sort of like Maryland is ready to deploy resources, we should be ready to deploy policies when the conditions are right. I'm actually grateful that Maryland is sort of a forward-thinking state in many ways on some of these issues. I'm remembering now my time in the legislature where not only did we put forward the initial sort of support of offshore wind under then Governor O'Malley, but on things like eligibility for programs, we were able to work with DHS to remove asset restrictions. So like we had the income eligibility, but then we also said, well, you can't have more than $10,000 or whatever it is, or $5,000 of assets, which in some cases meant you couldn't have a car, which then sort of just further pushed people into drawing down their assets to then have no protection again. So it was sort of just like we sometimes I think cut off our nose to spite our face with these programs, and it sounds like we're not doing that here in Maryland, which is great. Are there any specific speaking of the private sector, what are some of the positive things that you all would like to see that would be helpful in terms of facilitating even further sort of work or success? I know we mentioned tax credits, potentially. Are there other things that I should be thinking about as I continue my work that would be helpful to?
Yeah, one idea is an O&M tax credit for homeowners. A lot of people don't know that the solar's supposed to last 30 years on your roof, but you might get a bill for somebody to come replace an optimizer or a micro inverter on your house, like $1,000 in your third year. I would love to be able to tell a homeowner that you could write this off somehow. So, and of course, it's up to you to extend it to commercial, but I would love this really to be for just a regular day homeowner. And I think that may be a little bit of an easier lift than 30% tax credit on a brand new system. Just making sure that people are maintaining it. And if another thing that I could add is just how important it is to maintain these systems. So much solar has been installed, especially in the past 2 years, especially when everybody was nervous. And what happened was that the tax credit went away. Everyone just wanted solar. It just got thrown up very quickly, high quality, medium quality, and then of course, low quality work. It's going to be so important to make sure that we maintain this infrastructure. That's the biggest thing that I've learned in the past year. It's not just about installing the system, but making sure that it lasts its 30 years and that people are happy for the entire life of the system. So not only new installs, but now that we have so many gigawatts of solar all over the US, how are we going to take care of it, and how can we make it feasible for people to take care of it so that they don't just give up on the solar on their roof?
What does that upkeep look like? As someone who we've installed solar in our house, I don't think we've touched it since it's been installed a couple years now. What
do you my first question is, do you monitor it? Do you have an app that will tell you everything?
Yes.
So I'm very happy that nothing has gone wrong. And I hope nothing goes wrong. But it's very typical for in the life of a solar system for one of your micro optimizers, one of your panels to die. The manufacturer will likely send you a new one, but you got to pay somebody to get up on the roof to go make that replacement because it's not easy and you need people who know how to do it. So typically something like that.
And will that tracking, sorry to get a little bit will it tell you by panel, or is this something you have to sort of gauge by sort of energy production as to whether or not something is gone?
Absolutely. I mean, depending on what system you have. May I ask, do you have Solar Edge? Oh, all right. Well, talk to me after. I
Yeah.
can help you find out.
Want to pick up on the maintenance.
Yeah.
piece, Because the maintenance, we spend a lot of time during design and during installation on making sure all the pieces fit together. And then we walk away. And you have that 30-year opportunity for everything to go wrong. And so, with all your power, you could create one-stop shops like a library, but for homes. And so you have a question about, oh, what do I need to do to increase the energy efficiency, replace this system, put on solar? If there was a library, a house library to go to, and be like, hey, what do I do? And then we can use the whole house approach of like, oh, you have this question. You also should think about these other things to do at the same time. So it's access to information, which is what it would.
The pressure on my former friend, current and always friend, former colleague, but is that something that MEA could or should be doing, or MCED? Where can we put the library, I guess is the question.
MCEC is in the process of, and we do have some of the information on our website that tells us where we can go, how to do it. The efficiencies that we can buy into. We work with MEA. We have partnered with MEA on a number of solar things, for a solar revolving loan program, for the bridge facility, bridge financing facility program that works with commercial for multifamily affordable housing to do solar work on. And those things, it's in the process of being built for communities, but it is very helpful. It's called the toolkit.
I just wrote down this sort of O&M information repository. One thing that MEA in conjunction with MDE has been standing up over the past probably 2 years. It's called the Clean Buildings Hub, and it was created by the Climate Solutions Now Act to be sort of a source of information for large buildings that are going to have to comply with the building energy performance standards. And one of the things the hub lives at MEA, and we have a program manager who focuses on sort of curating information for building owners for things like, what do you need to do if you're going to be electrifying, and what do you need to think about first? We're also doing a really interesting sort of first movers webinar where we're shining a light on building owners, sometimes owners of multiple buildings on a campus, who are not only taking the regulatory responsibility seriously, but are trying to get out ahead of the requirements. And so they're sharing their stories with other building owners to say, here's how we thought about this. Here's what we needed to finance. Here's what we're thinking about long-term operation and maintenance. So I'm going to go back to my colleagues at MEA and talk to them about how we can make it a little more robust and maybe even direct some of the information toward homeowners.
And one more kind of plug for the really innovative work happening at MEA. Under their energy equity program for the solar work, there's the option to establish as a nonprofit partner an operations and maintenance reserve. So under that program, we've done about 160 low-income solar rooftop installs, and we are guaranteeing maintenance for low-income homeowners for 20 years. So we monitor every solar system. The moment we get a ping that some production is down, we send our crew out and we'll fix the issue. But squirrel eats through some wires, or replace.
Are you monitoring with the homeowner then? Or you're not just relying on them to
Yeah, so we
have the right tracking system or whatever?
Yeah, so they get a ping, we get a ping, and we send someone out.
That's
And
great.
we know that, it takes a lot of work to kind of keep up with some of this, and we want to make it as worry-free and easy as possible.
Any closing thoughts that folks have in terms of anything that we haven't covered? Is there a question you wish I would have asked you about the work you're doing, about what's missing, particularly at the federal level? But I think we've got a couple of good specific issues where we can follow up here. Sounds like you all have some good specific issues between each other to follow up on, but anything that you wanted to cover that I didn't have the opportunity to really get at.
I think we talked a lot about the buildings themselves, the clean energy systems that we need to power those buildings. The one thing that we didn't talk about, but we're certainly doing a lot of collaboration across Maryland, is toward the powering also of our cars and our transportation through our homes and our communities with EV charging and then transitioning to zero emission cars. And so we didn't get into it. I think we only had an hour, so we didn't get too far
Probably a whole
into
other
it.
hour on that.
But on the next roundtable, how we power our transportation systems
Yeah.
and the hearts of our communities, how we travel between these buildings that we've been talking about is also immensely important, and we're really investing, you know, through the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, still making those investments
Yeah.
on the infrastructure that's needed to power the transportation of the future, but that was
One thing we did not talk about, option though, is things like storage. Right? So like it's
Another big
part of, I think the solution there, both for homes to sort of power and not overwhelm the grid, but also for the larger grid to be able to be more resilient and sustainable.
topics for next time, but just know Maryland's ready whenever.
I love how you like make sure there's gonna be a next time. Well, before I close, I just wanted to, give Marissa, if you had any sort of closing thoughts or information you wanted to share about the work that you do with all of the partners here.
Sure, I'm so grateful for all of you coming, and I appreciate that you didn't all just jump up and say, actually, I have pages of information left that I haven't got to talk about, because I know you all do. So I apologize for making this only 1 hour, and I hope that you will stay in touch with Maryland LCV, and we can continue to share all of this really important information that you have for Maryland and for moving us all forward in that way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having
And I
us.
will just thank Marissa and LCV again for being the convener and the host of this. Thank you for the opportunity to hear what some of our amazing state partners, private sector folks are doing, organizations are doing out there. I am better when I hear directly from all of you. We are better when we take these ideas back and put it into the policy mix of the work that we're doing or the things that we're fighting against. And so to the extent it's only been an hour, you can blame me. Please don't blame Marissa or LCD for that. My schedule, I know that she would give all the time in the world because they are passionate about this, as are we. Which is why we think it's really important to take time, especially during these district weeks, to sit down and partner. But I will say, there will be up for further hours, half an hour is 15 minutes. So please come visit us on the Hill. Please stay in touch with our team. Would be happy to sort of stay connected as we explore legislative solutions, as we push back against bad ideas, and just continue to support the great work y'all are doing here in Maryland. I do feel very fortunate that I represent a state that has not backed away or shied away from these issues of affordability, sustainability, efficiency, whole house approach. I mean, I feel very lucky to represent Maryland. Especially when I see what's happening out there, and you all are such an important part of that team. So thank you for giving of your time. Monet, maybe we can do a picture before we go our separate ways. Do you want to direct us?
Yeah, maybe in front of the banner.
Banner, yeah, it's great.